Finance Director Mark Milne talks revenue on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Wednesday, April 24th, 2013. I'm Sarah Colvin. Earlier today, I spoke with our Director of Finance, Mark Milne, about the recently released third quarter revenue report. Milne says these numbers are key as the team completes work on the town's fiscal 14 budget. Most of the report is good news. Revenues for excise tax, meals tax, investment income, and special assessments are all tracking higher than anticipated. Milne talked with us about the key figures.
Categories within the general fund themselves are exceeding 75%, with a few of them actually already hitting their budget estimate through the first 9 months. For example, our excise taxes, motor vehicle excise and boat excise taxes, we've already reached our budget estimate of $4.9 million this year. We've actually collected $5.2 million. And this is a good indication of motor vehicle sales have recovered from the economic recession, and we're seeing that now. Most definitely with the latest bill file that we received from the Registry of Motor Vehicles that just went out in February, that billing for motor vehicle excise tax for fiscal year 2013 went up considerably from the previous 2 years, and so we're seeing a recovery there. We identified when we see that, what we've done is raise that revenue estimate for fiscal year 2014. What's happening in fiscal year 13 has given us the confidence where we now can raise that revenue estimate, and we're using a higher revenue estimate in developing our budget for 14. So, but we have a few categories of revenue like that that are tracking very well.
Indeed, and there are some that still need to have some money come in. Some of those enterprise accounts. Looking at the HYCC, what do we see from revenue from there?
Yeah, the HYCC is tracking at around, well, they're close to 79% of their revenue estimate for the first 3 quarters, which is above 75%. However, their busy season was that second and third quarter of the year. They're now entering into a slower time of the year for them, so you would expect them to be near the 80% mark at this point in time, maybe a little bit higher. But they're going to have to generate about another $250,000 for the remainder of this fiscal year for April, May, and June in order to hit their revenue estimate. By comparison, last year in the fourth quarter, they generated about $220,000. So it's possible that they could do that. If, however, they don't, and they don't hit their revenue estimate, they're going to have to cut back on expenditures and or use their reserves that they have in order to cover that potential revenue shortfall.
Indeed, so we will certainly see what happens there. And looking, of course, at Sandy Neck and the marinas, that's kind of the opposite. We're just heading into the busy season for Sandy Neck and the marinas.
Yes, those two are, we can't really look at the percentages of revenue collected to date for them and expect them to be at 75% through the first 3 quarters because of the seasonality of the permits and slip renewals that take place out there. That all happens in the last quarter of the fiscal year. And so we expect them to be very low through the first 3 quarters, and all that money, a lot of that money comes in the month of June, actually. So we're always waiting for the last day of June to see if they're going to make it. But we're confident that both those operations should hit their revenue estimates based on what's happening down Cape with the other off-road vehicle areas. I would expect that the activity out at Sandy Neck will continue to be similar to the pace that it was in the prior year, maybe not as high. We didn't budget it to be as high, which is, we went a little bit conservative on the budget, so we expect that to come in again very strong in the last quarter of the fiscal year. And of course, the marinas, we're hitting that time of the year where the slip renewals are now being billed and collected, and I think the final payment on slip renewals are due in the month of June.
Exactly, so certainly see there. I'm looking at meals tax and rooms tax as well, and those are tracking very well, and we're certainly not even into the busy tourist season yet, so I think we're going to expect to see a nice big return on those revenue sources for this year.
Well, actually, the meals and rooms taxes are always a quarter behind, so the revenue that we see here are really the revenues that were generated in the months of May through February, I believe. So it's 9 months. Is that 9 months? I can't add this morning.
We'll say yes.
So actually, the fourth quarter payment for meals and rooms taxes that we receive at the end of June is the lowest quarter of the year, because that represents like February, March, and April, or March, April, May, because it's collected by the establishments during those months. They have to send it up to the DOR. The DOR does their thing, and then they reimburse the communities a month later. So it's always about a quarter behind. However, both of those revenue estimates will be exceeded based on what we've collected in the fourth quarter in the previous years. And you said that meals tax looks very strong. It is very strong. We'll probably collect a total of $1.3 million in meals taxes for fiscal year 2013, and that represents about $175 million in sales.
That's amazing.
So that's a pretty strong economy when it comes to meals. That's for the town of Barnstable alone. By far, probably the largest meals restaurant business on the Cape. And so you think about that. That's a huge business for the town of Barnstable. $175 million in sales in that business sector for the town of Barnstable, based on that tax revenue we're bringing in. So very strong.
We are lucky to have so many fabulous restaurants here in town. It's hard to stay in shape, Mark.
Yes.
That makes it really hard.
Doesn't it?
So there's a category on here called special assessments. Can you tell me what the special assessments category is?
Yeah, most of this is, a couple of years ago, the state legislature increased the fine for business property owners who fail to file an income and expense report with the assessing operations. Those business and income reports are very important information for the assessor's operation. It's required by law for business property owners to fill it out, because these are used by the assessing operations in order to prepare valuations for business properties. And if you don't file the report, the fine has been increased from $50 to $250. But we're seeing that even though the fine was increased, there's still a hesitancy to comply with the filing requirement, and so we're issuing a lot of these special assessments for these. They're called fines, but they're in our special assessments category, and the businesses appear to be happy to pay the fine as opposed to perhaps paying an accountant to fill out the form for them, which may be even more expensive than paying the fine. So
interesting.
We didn't think that this category of revenue would generate revenue. Actually, we thought it would create compliance.
Right.
And so we've always estimated it to be a lower number. But for 2 years in a row now, the actual money coming in has been $50,000 higher than what we've been estimating for a revenue source. Now, I wouldn't jump to say, well, we can bump that revenue category up then, because I'd like to give it one more year and see if we can create better compliance before we do that. Because maybe another year people will start complying more, and we'll see that revenue category come down, because that's the intent. It's not a revenue generation function for the town. It's really more of a incentive to create some compliance.
This interview originally aired on this morning's edition of Barnstable This Morning. Finance Director Mark Milne joins us every Wednesday morning at 7:40 a.m. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.